folks. Welcome to another episode of the 10 Laws podcast with East Forest. I am East Forest. Today, I have a great episode with Ervin László. He is a professor. He's been twice nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And everything else he's done is, it goes on and on. It's incredible. Here's some highlights from his bio. He has appointments and research grants from Yale and Princeton, professorships for philosophy, systems science, to future sciences. I can't even say it all. Universities of Houston, Portland State, Indiana, Northwestern University, State University of New York. It goes on and on. He is the president of the Club of Budapest, which he's the founder. He is an advisor to UNESCO Director General. He has written, as he told me, 88 books, which is fitting because he's, I believe, just turned 88 years old. So, yeah, it's perfect. He basically started when he was 0, and he's continued to write a book a year, naturally. But he has a new book out that's called Reconnecting to the Source, the New Science of Spiritual Experience, How It Can Change You and How It Can Transform the World. So that is out now, and I'd read some of his books in the past, and so I reached out, and I was just really honored that I was able to get a chance to talk to him. He was out in Tuscany, and we set this up with the time zones, and we started, and he ended up being on Zoom with me, and he had a tie on and a suit and was standing up ready to go. And I said, you can relax. It's not actually going to be using the video. And he said, I am relaxed. I said, well, great. I was honored, totally honored to talk to him. And this was actually just before the COVID stuff was really starting to drop, particularly in Italy. So we didn't get into that, if you're wondering, but that's okay. We really kind of kept it to the subject matter of his book and his life's work, which is really about humanity going through the transformation we're going through. And I think you'll find it really interesting, and to hear from one of our elders and someone who's been thinking about this stuff for a very, very long time. So that's coming right up. When I'm recording this, I just finished doing the Ram Dass live stream as part of the Love Server members virtual retreat that they did this weekend. So thanks for everybody who joined in on that. It is still on their website for a while on the Vimeo, and then it's on my YouTube, East Forest Music on YouTube. If you want to catch the set, it's basically a 90-minute live set where I play pretty much exclusively Ram Dass material, like the music from the album, and reinventing it a bit through my live set. So if you want to check that out, please do. And again, thank you to everyone who dropped in. I think I'm going to be doing another ceremony style live stream. It's like this is the thing we do now, live streams on May 2nd. I would say it's confirmed. I sometimes when I finish one of these, I need to have a little break because it's a lot of energy to not just prepare, but get all the tech stuff ready and then to do it. And then, so this one's about 2 weeks away. Right now it's April 20th when I'm recording this, but May 2nd, and it'll probably be on YouTube again, maybe Facebook Live. You can check my website, get on the mailing list. Obviously follow along on social media, East Forest Music and East Forest, and we'll try to keep you informed. So looking forward to sharing that one with you. Also, I want to send a big congratulations out to my friend Duncan Trussell, who has a brand new show that's out on Netflix called The Midnight Gospel. I got a chance when I went out to have lunch with Duncan in LA. This is a while ago, maybe 6 months or something. I think it was the summer. And he was at the studio where he was making this, and he says, do you want to come in and see some of the show? And I'm like, of course. And I walked in, and it was like a sea of 100 people at computer terminals animating and creating this show. I couldn't believe the scale of this production. And we went back in his office, and he showed me some of the show. It was really early at the time. Some of it was still sort of hand-drawn animated stuff put to the sound, and it's a combination of using audio from his podcast to create an animated show, but then there's all these other layers of stories and happenings, and it's just super weird in the best way. It's super Duncan, and it's out now, and so I can't recommend it highly enough. If you want to take a deep psychedelic dive, check out The Midnight Gospel on Netflix. And also, happy birthday to Duncan. Otherwise, we are continuing our quarantine here in Boise, Idaho. I came up to Boise from Boulder, Utah, and to do the live stream and stick around to do the next one. And then I hope to be going back down there if I can. It was really nice, but it is nice up here too. I mean, the trees are starting to bloom. The flowers are blooming too. It's fragrant in the air. And Rod and I are having starting to settle into what this means to just be kind of doing what we do and not being running around so much, which is, I suppose, the benefit of this bitter medicine we're receiving. And still lots of exploration going on for us and me internally about what this all means and what's unfolding out of it and where we go from here. But as I've said before, I'm trusting more and more that unfoldment and watching it happen and not trying to rush it. I think what a lot of this is about slowing down, which seems to be the normal human pace that perhaps we're trying to reconnect to out of our digitalizedness. So on that rate, let's just get into this. Hey, and thank you for reviewing the podcast. If you want to do that while you're listening or while I'm talking right now, you can do that on Apple Podcasts. You just scroll down, give it 5 stars. If you'd like to give it a written review, that's awesome. You don't even have to. Just doing the rating helps a lot. And of course, sharing it if you like the episode or a particular episode in the past. I try to make these as evergreen as possible so that if you went back in time and listened to any of them, they could be hopefully just as valuable now as they were when they were released. Okay, let's do this. This is, I have the honor to introduce to you Ervin László. So I am a musician, and I also kind of the world that I'm in has a lot to do with the world of wellness and meditation and introspection. And I noticed at the end of your book, your new book here, Reconnecting to the Source, you said that free associating on the piano led to the 90 books that you have written. And that sentence really, really stuck out to me. And I was hoping you could tell me a little bit more about how there's that connection between the creativity, the piano, and all these disparate ideas that you've had over the years.
Well, of course, the problems were in my head. What I wanted to, what I was asking, what I was inquiring, what I was researching, But the way the answers came was very often after or during while I was playing the piano. I was living in Switzerland in the beginning of this period when I wrote my first book. And there I had a studio where I had a nice concert grand. And next to it was a desk with a portable typewriter at the time, far from the big equipments today, a little Remington black typewriter. Mm-hmm. And after what I would play, and I would allow my mind to wander, if what I played sounded good and well, I was happy with it. And then I was just free associating and thinking about things. And then it seems to me that I came up with an interesting idea, popped into my head. I would sit down at the typewriter and start banging it out. And these were a set of notes that I traveled with. I was giving concerts and doing concert tours. And I traveled with them and became quite a voluminous set of notes, but always unplanned, just things that happened.
Right.
And then it so happened that after one of my concerts in The Hague, in the Netherlands, a gentleman came to me at a concert and asked me if I'm also interested in ideas. And I said, surely. And he said, well, but that's his job. He's working with ideas. And can we discuss some of that? He said, as an artist, I might have interesting ideas. And we started talking. And this was late in the evening after the concert. And this gentleman disappeared. together with my notes, because he asked me if I could show him the notes. And we were sitting at that time at the restaurant in the lobby of the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And then he disappeared. And I was somewhat worried. I wrote them by hand, and they were the only copies I had. I didn't worry too much because I said, well, they're only interesting for me anyway. So, but next morning, this gentleman showed up and he said, I'll publish it. And I said, who are you? Because we never exchanged actually identities. And he said he's an editor of the company called Martinus Nijhoff. It's a major science and theology publisher in Holland. And he said, well, it takes a lot of work to put it into a format for a book, but you have the ideas and we'd like to publish it. So that was the first time it occurred to me that my ideas that came to me spontaneously would be of interest to anybody other than myself. Then we worked on it for an hour, for a year, and then it got published.
So it seems like you're saying something about playing music, that creative act, it sort of set the stage of your mind to be very receptive to these other ideas after you played. It sort of primed something about your being.
I think it's receptivity. I mean, for nowadays, after so many years of thinking about it, I come to the conclusion that it's not a question of generating those ideas, it's a question of receiving them.
Yes. And how do you think, what role do you think music can play in that for other people as well, as a way of maybe receiving more?
Well, it's opening up on sensitivities beyond the narrow limits of the eye and the ear and the sense organs, opening it up. So we just simply respond, we resonate with more than that narrow range.
Right. In this new book, you talk a lot about the holotropic mindset or the holotropic space or energy. Could you just give us a brief definition of what that means to you in this sort of paradigm of thought? To be holotropic?
Holotropic means, holos means whole in classical Greek, and tropic means an attraction, a tendency, a pull towards something, And holotropic means a tendency toward wholeness. And the reason that I call it that is because I've come to the conclusion that this universe could not have been born or could not have developed or evolved the way it did, couldn't have become what it is, unless there was something that mitigated the role of chance. It couldn't be purely random. If it was purely random, we would still be there with inert gases just swirling around in space and time, in space. But it doesn't, unlike the explanation given by mainstream science for the past 100 years or so, this is now breaking up the idea of having been that chance interactions just create more and more structure, and those act together by chance, and they create higher and higher level structures. It turned out that this is not an explanation even of the DNA of a fruit fly. There's simply not enough time for random interactions to produce complex and coherent systems. So something must be put in. Now we're getting into deep metaphysics, actually, evolutionary theory. But the idea why the holotropic, I think there is what in science we can call an attractor, something which is non-random, non-chance, which is moving, impelling a system toward a certain kind of outcomes. And this attractor is impelling all the systems that seems to be born from quanta and from atoms and molecules and the cells and so on. They seem to be impelling them toward coherence, toward creating whole systems where all the parts are integrated together, work together. Like in a good recording or a good orchestra and a good ensemble, all the elements, all the players work together to create a coherent whole. And I think the universe is working something like this, and I'm not the only one who says that. There's, for example, Max Planck in a famous statement said there must be higher intelligence responsible for the nucleus of an atom being formed from protons and neutrons. So it's sort of not a chance event. There is something there. And this is something, is a kind of a tropism towards creating coherent systems that maintain themselves in a sea of chaos, in a sea of turbulence. So that's the reason for calling, instead of calling it God or calling it Tao or calling it Buddha or whatever else, the great spirit, I say this is an attractor. But it could be a great mind, a great intelligence behind it. Einstein said that there's bound to be a greater intelligence than ours behind this. But there it is. We have to accept that the universe is not a chance phenomenon, and it evolves toward higher and higher levels of coherence, despite all the surface discoherence that we feel, that we see.
If we use this term attractor and assume that it's a kind of feedback, what role does the individual play? How does our choice affect this attractor? What is the back and forth between these two energies, between us, the individual, and this organizational energy?
Well, the attractor is something like a universal law. It's a law, it's a process that impels systems to move beyond mere chance toward a certain kind of outcome. And we can't change that. That's given. It's like a higher intelligence, like the will of God or whatever you call it. But we can choose whether we go with it or ignore it or even go against it. So how we act is something that's up to us. But this is given, just like the law of attraction. This is a kind of an attraction. It's an attraction toward wholeness. And that is given. That is a universal given in the world.
So do you think that it's sort of a natural phenomenon? Like as people, a lot of people today, we feel like we're in this very globalized world where there's a massive transition happening, this evolution of people and societies and ideas and information. And everyone wants to know, like, what do I do? How do I thread the needle of this time? And are you saying that it's sort of like it's inevitable because we're inside of this thing? We can't not be in it? Or is there something that people can choose to do or an action they can take that maybe would help them?
Absolutely choose. We have freedom. This is not a deterministic universe. Mm-hmm. It's not a Newtonian universe. We have real freedom of choice. And this freedom of choice is given to us by a higher level of consciousness. We can become aware of things. We interpret those things, and we are free to choose whether we go with it or not. We're even free to choose whether we interpret it rightly or wrongly. These are all possibilities. A lower level of consciousness, like most animals, doesn't have that level of that grade of freedom. If they don't interpret the world around them rightly, they die out. But we have, that's natural selection, but we have around us, we have technology, we have our constant compensation for our errors. So we live in a more and more stressed condition in the world that we misinterpret and we mistreat, but we still maintain ourselves in it. And that's the problem of today's world, really.
That people don't choose, that don't harness that
don't choose
element.
Right.
And sort of saying like, hey, I can choose, I need to choose, as opposed to maybe feeling like a victim or being asleep in their own
That's
life.
Right.
Yeah. This book has many stories of integrated experiences from other people, and I would assume you put this in here, or maybe the book itself is a form of inspiration. Is that how you see it? Or a way of, by telling stories? Yeah.
All my books are results of some form of guidance. That I sit down and write. I have the idea, I have the problem, try to focus in my mind what I want to express. And then when I sit down, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But most of the time, the books that I've actually published and the articles and the talks I'm giving are all happening on the basis of something that is happening, that is coming. So this is not, this is also not a chance phenomenon. This book itself is part of the result of call it inspiration or insight. It's something that I became convinced I need to communicate, because I feel that this deeper attractor, this deeper impulse, the evolutionary impulse, which, by the way, is expressed in music, is expressed in sentiment, is expressed in love, it explains in solidarity, and etc. But all this is basically an impulse that is in us, that we can manifest, that we can perceive if we allow it. All of Buddhism, it seems to be, with some exaggeration we can say, is based on the idea of letting go, allowing this deeper level of inspiration to surface to our consciousness.
Right.
So this is something that I wanted to communicate, because I'm convinced that in each of us there is this deeper guidance which is there, and we have to allow it to surface and to guide our steps and express it. Whether express it in music or in poetry or in fiction or in dance or in whatever form, theater, whatever form we express it, simply just self-expression in the many ways that we have. I mean, that is then, if we can express that, we do something of right, we do something to our potential, instead of allowing ourselves to go on all these dead ends, all the wrong ways in which we do it, where we are led by the hunger for power, hunger for money, and then we do whatever comes that way, in our way, disregarding our relations to each other and to the rest of the world. So it's time to return to the source. That's the title of the book, and that's what that's the motivation for writing it.
This is bringing up some of those really larger metaphysical questions in my mind and in my heart. And I would just like to ask you, I mean, through all these inquiries and books and thoughts that you've had, I mean, why do you think we're even here doing all of this as people? You know, why is there an organizational force that's trying to create order out of chaos? Why is there chaos at all?
Well, there simply isn't chaos. I mean, the chaos is a sub-form of an evolutionary drive towards coherence. But what we do is we are producing chaos because we are misreading the nature of this universe, misleading the nature of evolution, nature of who we are, or what nature is, you know. Therefore, we are producing incoherence. And that is often expressed in chaos, and it can be dangerous. It can lead to the extinction of species.
But do you think, like, I'm just trying to, people often ask that big why question, and not that there's necessarily an answer. In a sense, it's the mystery because it's supposed to be. But I was wondering if you've had insights yourself, just personal insights about why we're going through this journey at all.
We are part of the universe. We are part of evolution, and we have reached a high level of consciousness, higher than the other living species on this particular planet. I don't think we're unique in the universe, but over here we are the most articulately conscious species, that as far as we know. Also dolphins and whales may come close. The fact is that here we are an outcome. We are a product, although I don't like the term product, an outcome. We are a resultant of evolution. And that's what we are born into. Now, if we don't live up to our potentials, we can become extinct. A lot of other species have become extinct. But here we have a possibility of recognizing what the world is around us and of living in accordance with a better insight. That's a possibility, that's a potential. And the key to it is not out there by some authority who would dictate what to do. The key is in us. The key is finding in our heart, in our deepest subliminal consciousness, what we truly feel the world is like and what we are in the world. This deep feeling, whether it's through meditation or whether it's through artistic experience, the experience of nature or whatever, it can come to us, we can recognize it, and then we can act on it. I think any musician who really works truly with great music will recognize that there is something sublime, something higher or deeper than we are when the great music is being realized around us, achieved around us. And we enter into another world. And that's given to us. That's given to us. But it's up to us to recognize it and to use it for our own benefit and for the benefit of life on this planet.
Are there any personal practices that you have or advice you give on how people can be more receptive to this and be more in tune?
Allow it. Allow your broader consciousness, extended consciousness to surface. Our brain, and this is a very good scientific evidence for that also, is sensitive. It resonates to a much wider range of frequencies than those that are picked up by the eye and the ear and by the bodily senses. And we also know that when we enter into a so-called modified or altered state of consciousness, we pick up information, just called the most general term, information that is not available through our senses.
Right.
And this infuses us. This is the basis of creativity, the basis of inspiration. So the practice is really just to become more fully what you can be. Allow your consciousness to resonate with the world around you instead of shutting it down and looking at your immediate benefits, your immediate satisfactions without regard to anything else, as though nothing else would exist. The great fault of this modern world that is misled by a paradigm which is attributed to Newton, although Newton himself was a very spiritual person. He didn't mean it like that. But his followers created a mechanistic universe based on Newton's laws. And then from Darwin's followers created a world that is based on competition. Dog is dog, and the winner survives. The rest just disappears. These are faulty ideas. The universe is not a mechanism, and it's not a jungle. The universe is an evolutionary whole, a quantum whole, where all things are connected to all the other things. And it all together evolves toward higher levels of coherence. We are part of this evolution. We can choose to be a positive part. We can choose to ignore it. We can also choose to act as though it didn't exist and go against it. That's not to our benefit. It's not in our interest, but it's a choice.
That's a key point, is that it's our choice, that we can choose our role in our own evolution in that sense.
Absolutely. We can make our evolution. The opportunities, the conditions are given, but there is a lot of freedom. There's a freedom to go with it. The great advantage of a conscious mind is the freedom to choose our destiny, but it's the great risk at the same time, because we can misread what there is and choose in a way that it doesn't fulfill our destiny. We can go down. We can still create a world in which that goes down, that destroys the human species, destroys higher forms of life. We're perfectly capable of doing that. But it's time to wake up in that sense and to receive that resonate with the deeper level of consciousness that's in us. That's how Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. It's in us. That holotropic attractor is expressed in every time you create something, every time we seek some meaning in the world. That's what I keep writing about, that's what I keep talking about, and trying to back it up with good, solid scientific evidence.
Yes. Well, just to honor your time, just a few more questions. But one thing I wanted to ask you about is, I know it feels like time is essentially running out in a way for humanity to make some big choices and to make some change. And I've always believed that has to come from the individual out. There's no other way. We make our own choices, and then we see that sort of change in the world. But there's been a lot of research lately and a resurgence in psychedelic medicines as of late, and some people see this as a promise for people to make bigger changes perhaps faster through their own self-realization. Do you feel that there is some promise in the use of psychedelics therapeutically, or do you have any experience with that personally? Has that been part of your process?
I'm currently working on a book which is based on the ancient idea of an Akashic field, where everything is connected, where all things work together. And how we can even read that field. How can we have Akashic experiences? And one of my collaborators is a gentleman by the name of Chris Bach, B-A-C-A-G, who is a professor of philosophy, who has taken on himself for the past 10 years or maybe more to experiment on himself with LSD. So it's entering into this deep, highly altered states of consciousness. He undergoes events, he undergoes experiences, images and ideas appear. And when he comes out, he writes them down. So he's written several books. Now he's been writing an article, a very good one, for my new book. And he testifies to the fact that, yes, in a sense, we can read the Akashic field, to use this traditional terminology, by entering a psychedelically modified state of consciousness. This is not to recommend that we all go and take psychedelics, but it's just to show that there is more to this world than we recognize in our ordinary states of consciousness. And we should allow our mind, preferably not through psychedelics, not through artificial synthetic means, but through natural means, enter into a state in which these perceptions can be conveyed to consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, some of these chemicals like DMT is endogenously produced in our bodies, it seems, and perhaps even through tantric yoga or breathing, Kriya yoga, there's ways of sort of amping up these processes in our own bodies. It seems to be part of the operating system of a human being.
Yeah, and this deeper consciousness, accessing the deeper levels of reality. I mean, the great wisdom teachers always were operating on that level. I think all religious prophets, the founders of the great religions, must have had these experiences. And then they tried to communicate them to their followers. And of course, the followers very often made a mess of it and just mistaking the deep absolute and a person or a personalized being who is then giving the orders. Whereas it's up to us, really.
And how do you think science has yet to catch up with some of these notions? I mean, as you said, we've been in this Newtonian mindset that sort of lit a dogmatic scientific fuse that we're still running on, but there has been a shift, and your books and your ideas are part of it. And as you mentioned, there's a wave of ideas about sort of a merging of spirit and science. Are you hopeful that we will create a unified viewpoint from the world of science, that they'll start to give more credence to these other thoughts?
Science is a tool. Science is an instrument. And we are grasping this instrument, we are turning to it because everything else is failing. It looks like we are not on the right way. We need guidance. So we can get guidance, higher guidance through prayer, through meditation. We can also get guidance through looking at the meaning and the deeper meaning of the scientific view of the cosmos, of evolution, and of the nature of life. We are gradually realizing that we need to get to these better views, to these deeper views, and science is one of the means. In this, of course, the role of crisis and instability is very crucial. It's what upsets, makes decoherent the current world. It's what disrupts the world and our world picture. When that happens, as it is happening now, then there's an opening, there's a window opening for alternative ways. And this is the chance now, whether we will take these alternative ways, return to the source, or go with the artificial synthetic ideas, which are very often mistaken ideas.
So there's a gift in the cracks. There's a gift in when things start to fall apart. That's really beautiful.
There is, yes. Crisis, there is no transformation without crisis. And there's no progress without transformation. So ultimately, we need crisis, but let's use it. Let's not wait before crisis makes the roof fall in. Let's do it before that.
Well, Reconnecting to the Source is a book that will be on sale in March of 2020, which is now. Is it out yet? Or is
March 24th. It's physically manufactured already, but it will go into the bookstores March 24th. It can already be ordered through Amazon, through the publisher, and various sites.
Well, I just want to honor you and thank you for all the work you've done over the years. I can't believe how many books you've written and how many ideas you've put out there. And you're telling me you're working on another one now.
For the record, it's 101 books now.
Oh, well, then they need to correct that. Yes.
Yes, that's my updated bio.
101. Wow. 101 books. Okay. Well,
But I haven't written them, all of them, to be quite honest. It's not a question of having written them from word one to the last word. Many of them I have co-edited or worked with colleagues. 101 books have appeared under my name, sometimes as author, sometimes as editor. But I'm responsible for these books.
well, I understand that. I have 23 musical releases, but some of them have remixes. Some of them are, yes. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for spending a little time with us, and thank you for providing the book for me to read. And it's just a real honor to be able to get to talk to you and connect and do a small part to help continue to spread these messages you're putting out there.
Well, we are all in the same boat, and this boat is in turbulent waters. So we might as well look for the shore, look for the lighthouse. And I'm trying to provide a little light which will bring us in that direction.
And it sounds like when we see the light, it's our choice to point the direction towards that light. And I really like that message.
Very good. So thanks for this chat. I think it's very good to get artists, musicians particularly involved in this. We can contribute a great deal to finding the way.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Well, thank you very much, Professor László. I hope you're staying healthy and well in northern Italy. I really appreciated the time we had together to talk, and I hope you can check out his new book as well as his 80 plus others. I mean, wow, amazing. This music that you are hearing in the background is called Endings, and it's the live version from the album Live at the Old Church that we got to play in Portland, Oregon, a concert there a couple years ago. That also has a vinyl. There's a Live at the Old Church vinyl. There's a few left of those that you can get over at theeastforest.org. But otherwise, perhaps, check back on the website, mailing list, socials. Maybe we can share this May 2nd live stream. It's going to be a ceremony style, so it's going to be a deep dive into the shamanic space, sort of like the first two that I did. And I think that's always a wonderful opportunity for you guys to dive deep and dive within and see what's there, see what's speaking to you. Until then, keep walking your walk. Don't take any shit, but if you do it with grace.
Review, fix, and change.